After last month's kidnapping in Algeria, the primary threat to BP employees would appear to be operations in the Middle East and in Africa, where the threat of terrorist attacks remains. But it isn't. Extraordinary figures from internal documents from the company shows the main threat comes from the retail fuel stations in the United States. Benoit Fakor has been looking at these figures. Benoit, this is hard to believe. 53 deaths in the 14 years up to the Algerian incident.
Well, yeah, of course, these are not always BP employees, could be security guards, could be customers, but it reflects very well the amount of violence basically that is taking place in these particular operations, and shows that really the danger for an oil company tends to be more the fuel station, not the remote field in the Sahara.
I mean, these figures that you've been looking at, I mean, is this comprehensive BP data? Are these leaked documents? Where have these figures come from?
So basically, it's a list of security incidents that we've reviewed. Basically, that is not necessarily comprehensive. We don't know how exhaustive it is, but it gives a good indication of where the largest amount of violence is taking place in BP's operations.
Okay, in those 14 years, I believe there are 117 deaths in all their operations. So how does that 53 in the US stack up with the rest of the world?
Well, the largest number by far is US fuel stations, definitely. Now, there's also a lot of deaths at fuel stations also in South Africa and Venezuela, and the rest is fairly marginal, very few in Europe and very few in non-retail.
But does BP, for example, have a lot more retail operations in Europe than it does in the US?
No, actually, I would say, of course, the majority is US, but 38% is in Europe, and despite that, only 7% of the fatalities related to security are in Europe. So there is much more violence clearly at fuel stations in the US than in Europe.
I mean, what's interesting as well here is that the figures seem to show that there are only 12 deaths at the non-retail operations for the company,
exactly.
Which shows that, you know, it's actually really, it is the retail operations that are most at risk, where you're most at risk. I mean, why do you think these operations, you know, the fuel stations are so dangerous?
Well, they're more exposed to the violence of society, whichever the society it is, basically. I mean, South Africa is a good example. For instance, it's not a huge business for BP, but yet there is more than 20 people that died at their fuel station. So it's more an indication of society, not BP.
What has BP said? I mean, have you asked BP about these figures?
They've declined to comment, yes, on this.
Benoit, thank you very much.
You're welcome.